the Mutual Broadcasting System presents Richie and John.
Two voices strong in the podcast sphere. Richie and John, let's make it clear. Bringing the stories, bold and true. Standing with pride for the LGBTQ. The Mutual Broadcasting System, the network of pride. With Mutual, it's voices that are taking your side. Richie and John, hear the world echo your name. Fighting for justice, lighting freedom's flame. Champions of diversity, truth in the night. In the battle for equality, they're ready to fight.
The podcast that connects you with the people, events, headlines, and lifestyle interests of the global LGBTQ plus community. Here's Richie Roy and John McMullen.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Richie and John. It is Newsday Tuesday. If you are watching on YouTube, you will notice that things look a little different. I am live on location. I did not move. I am on location, actually from the same time zone you are in. I am in California. I am near Sacramento.
You're in what we call upstate California.
Yes, I'm in upstate California, visiting my parents' house, and the lighting is not optimal, but we will do our best. I'm being lit by the most glaringly harsh, cold LED light bulb, so not a fan of that. But we will power through. We had a great episode this last Saturday. I was indisposed and wasn't available, but you and James did an amazing episode and talked about really important stuff that is happening as we speak with regards to veterans. It is crazy, all of that. And, I think the political import of alienating tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people who are probably predisposed to like Donald Trump is not the smartest move to make.
No, definitely not.
So if you didn't listen to that episode, definitely check it out. But we have a ton of news stories for you today, sort of a bunch of different things that affect the LGBTQ community
today, because I think that there's some stuff in here that really actually, even though it's rooted in bad news, it's really good news.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, let's start off out in Ohio.
Yeah, let's do. So Ashton Colby's battle for gender-affirming care faces uncertainty under Donald Trump's potential policies, but in a little glimmer of hope, there's unwavering support from his father, Rick Colby. Rick Colby, a Trump supporter, stands firmly for his son's trans rights, saying to CNN, quote, "Keeping your child alive and helping them thrive transcends political ideology." Rick's backing was evident when Ashton, now 32, recovered from top surgery with his dad by his side, ensuring his well-being. For Ashton, a continued testosterone regimen is crucial to managing gender dysphoria, a condition he feels liberated from. However, he's anxious about the possible federal limitations on care for adults like him. Rick criticizes the extreme right's denial of transgender identities, advocating for trans individuals' rightful pursuit of happiness, just like any other citizen. He argues his conservative background, coupled with his support, sets an example that this issue surpasses political boundaries. Together, Rick and Ashton embrace advocacy to fortify their bond, with Ashton expressing, "I'm safe with him here." So, these moments matter. This reminds me in a way of stories that we heard decades ago about being gay, where you had a conservative, maybe Christian parent whose kid came out and they maybe, it wasn't part of their political language, but they at least had the empathy and love for their own child to reconsider whether their political, sort of ideological stance squared with just basic compassion and decency and care for the person that they raised and grew up with and knew. So this is it's a great story, and it's just a reminder that not every Trump supporter is a glassy-eyed ideological psychopath. Some of them have capacity to even care for their own children.
Yeah, I think that's important, but I also think, you know, blood is thicker than water, and you really need to think about what are the consequences of my vote if I'm going to support that ticket, because maybe I agree with them ideologically on some things, but then when it's something that is so major as to vilify the trans community as though it was the absolute worst thing in our universe, and your own flesh and blood is trans, it would be really hard for me to see where somebody could reconcile that in their life and, you know, still stay a Trump supporter. I believe that people can absolutely be conservative and still be supportive of people who are trans or even LGBT or, you know, the other letters in the alphabet. But I don't know. He has made such a huge deal out of vilifying the trans community that it's beyond all reason to me how you can be supportive of a candidate like that and be supportive of your son or daughter if they are trans.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of that cuts a lot of different ways too. I mean, we are seeing stories now as this administration ramps up really aggressive anti-immigrant policies.
Yeah.
Of people whose spouses are immigrants they voted for Trump, and their wife is being deported or has been deported.
Yeah, I mean, you honestly, if I didn't know better, I would have assumed that Eric Trump was a transgender person, because I completely could see him having grown up, having been forced to wear dresses and things like that earlier on in life because his dad has such an appreciation for little girls. And of course I'm being facetious, but I mean, seriously, what if one of Donald Trump's children were like that? I want to believe in my heart that he would not be as extreme as the real president, Elon Musk, and completely kill off that other child, you know, in their mind. I would like to believe that he believes so much in his own family that he would have found the light. I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore.
I mean, it's hard to know because there is that kind of story, and I forget which kind of like extended family member of Trump's, but that has, you know, a special needs child. And there's that story where, you know, they were talking with him, and he basically
the kid's name is Barron.
No, it wasn't Barron. It was like someone who's in the extended Trump family, and basically Trump kind of intimated like, well, I mean, maybe they should just they shouldn't live. Like they should just be sent through a wood chipper, basically. Because they're special needs. So the idea that empathy is something he's capable of, even for one of his direct children, I'm not sure of.
Yeah.
But certainly not for anyone else. But in this case, Rick Colby has been there for Ashton, and good for him.
Good for him.
And maybe keep going with that. Maybe that kind of that empathetic little glimmer, maybe extend that beyond your kin and think whether or not this person that you support, you should be supporting at all.
Yeah. Well, and again, we have other stories tonight or today to get to, but when we do that, you're going to see that people's minds can be changed, and people can have an enlightenment that does bring them around the bend on things like this. So I think it's really important for people to have honest, open dialogue with others, even and especially when they don't necessarily understand you or understand what you face. And when you really put that human face on it and they have to deal with it in real life, you absolutely can change minds and hearts.
Yeah.
Well, from Ohio, let's head to the other O that has been no, Oklahoma. Their state superintendent of instruction there, Ryan Walters, has stirred controversy by mandating the teaching of unsubstantiated 2020 election fraud claims in high school social studies. Walters insists on presenting discrepancies, as he refers to them, in election results, framing them as critical investigations for students. Although courts dismissed over 60 Republican-led election fraud cases, Walters argues that students should evaluate graphs and data that question the 2020 outcomes. Critics highlight that school districts faced pressure to maintain neutrality, with fears that such standards could lead to bias in classrooms. Walters also defends the initiative aiming to counter perceived left-wing narratives and promote critical thinking. Opponents view it as a propagandist, resembling Walters' controversial move to display Bibles signed by Donald Trump in schools, incurring a substantial cost. Well, Representative Ronnie Johns voices concerns about potential teacher biases and implications for religious content in state education. The plan was quietly approved in a recent board meeting, raising questions about transparency and timing. This one does not pass my smell test. I'm sorry.
You mean in terms of just what he's getting at here? Or?
Out and out BS. It has no place happening in any public classroom or institution of learning.
No, it's. I mean, this is like. I mean, like maybe if you're taking the AP My Pillow test, like this is just idiocy,
right?
And the fact that this is the same person who wanted to literally requisition to purchase the Donald Trump Bibles for schools. This is just a true believer. This is a MAGA, acolyte. And
I do so much work to try and keep their names out of my mind. But wasn't this also the school system or state with its school system that had also had that one female firebrand commentator who hates trans people and was fighting, women or trans women in sports? I'm sorry.
Right. Is it Chaya Raichik?
Yeah.
Oh, was this, you might be right.
I think Oklahoma was one of the states that she was doing her dirty
consulting work for. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you're right about that. But yeah, no, this person is just, and the thing is, it really highlights again the rampant hypocrisy here, because mandating teaching of wingnut, discredited, false 2020 election fraud claims, while meanwhile making it impossible to teach about the existence of slavery in U.S. history. It's like you can't teach real things now, but you can certainly teach fake things. And this is exactly why too, the Republican.
Are we going to teach, by the way, pre-law and talk about all the court cases that were tossed on their, butts by judges across the country related to Donald Trump's attempts to claim that he won that election?
Well, one of the things that they probably won't be teaching is the Constitution, because right now they are actively flouting judicial authority, which is a sort of foundational aspect of our constitutional democracy. So they probably won't teach that, but they will show, quote, graphs and data that the 2020 outcome was rife with election fraud. So, this goes to, again, why devolving education completely to the states with no federal oversight, which is what the Republicans want to do, and are actively working to do. What's her name? Linda McMahon, who is now the head of the DOE, has been charged with closing it down. That is her job. She sent out a message to the staff saying that this is their, quote, final mission is to wind down the Department of Education and shut it. And this Oklahoma bullshit is exactly why that shouldn't happen, because you need some oversight over, states left alone can do some crazy things when it comes to educating our youth. So, Oklahoma, you're not looking good here. But we do have a story out of Wisconsin that again shows that people's minds can be changed. At a legislative hearing on Assembly Bill 104, Larry Jones of Milwaukee publicly changed his stance from supporting the bill to apologizing to the trans community. He initially intended to back the bill, which targets gender-affirming care for minors, but after listening to, get this, testimonies from actual trans individuals, he reconsidered. Quote, "My eyes were opened," Jones admitted, acknowledging his past ignorance after waiting over 6 hours to testify. A video from the ACLU of Wisconsin captures this moment of transformation. Despite emotional testimonies from many who opposed the bill, the Republican-led committee voted 10-5 to advance it, although Governor Tony Evers has promised a veto. During the hearing, Representative Adam Nalen defended the bill as a cautious approach to irreversible medical procedures, yet stressed that it wasn't an attack on trans identity. Meanwhile, State Representative Lisa Subeck saw the hearing's dialogues as a sign of potential progress, underscoring the importance of open, empathetic conversations. Yeah, listen to actual trans people. Who knows best? People who are actually going through a lived experience of being trans, or Donald Trump?
Yeah, always better to have somebody who's walked a mile in those shoes.
Absolutely. And the thing is, what they like to do, one of their favorite things to do with the trans, specifically with the trans community, is they will find extreme outliers. There are a handful of, quote, detransitioners out there who maintain that they were, quote, tricked into being trans, that they regret their being trans. There is a couple weirdos, kind of like the ex-gay movement, You can always find some fringe lunatic who goes against, 99% of the data and the stories and the anecdotes and everything else. And they'll find that one random person, that one disgruntled detransitioner, put them on every news story, bring them before Congress, and make this trumped up narrative that transitioning or gender-affirming care is risky, is dangerous, unproven, is worse than anything. When you look at the actual data, which again, they hate data, that's why they're trying to get rid of science everywhere they can, the data is clear. Gender-affirming care for minors and for adults is overwhelmingly a good idea. And so again, listen to real trans people talking about their lived experience, and maybe, like Larry Jones, you will change your mind. So that I'm glad he did that. And the thing that's crazy to me is that it sounds like he was waiting over 6 hours to testify, and I'm curious whether he was waiting that whole time and thought he was going to talk and support the bill, and then he decided to talk in support of trans folks. And if it was the former, why would you wait 6 hours to talk about something you don't know a fucking thing about?
Well, fortunately, he got educated while he was waiting. Yeah. And actually, I did hear the recording, and, they asked him how many people are still out there. And there were a lot, because they were in an overflow room, which is where he had been. And then he'd gotten called into the main chambers for the council meetings. Room began to clear out for other people to be able to come in. And so the person who was sitting at the dais and talking, whoever, I presume the board chair, the mayor, or whoever it was, probably told him, or did tell him, in fact, in that conversation, to go ahead and let the others back there know that they need to start coming in here now, because we're getting low on slips for people to talk. I don't know if you've ever gone to a city council meeting and everybody has an opportunity to speak. They get a couple of minutes, and he did not use his full few minutes that they afford him, but he was quick and to the point and very pointed about how, in his getting to know some of these people and hearing their stories, how he had come to change his mind. And it was really refreshing to hear.
It is refreshing.
Yeah.
And it's also, it's great to hear too, people moving in the right direction, because we're hearing about so many people moving in the wrong direction, especially, we've talked about it before.
Well, so many of them are just people like you're talking about, who they don't know the experience of these people. They don't know what they're talking about. They have no basis for it, because they've never taken the time to get to speak to somebody, because these people have always been turned into the boogeyman. Yeah.
The boogeyman that they've never met a trans person in their life.
Right.
And there might not even be an openly trans person in their town. There might not be a trans person in their small town. I mean, like, maybe not Milwaukee, but there are folks in this country who think that the number one menace to society right now is trans people. And they live in some podunk, one stop sign town where there are no trans people. Trans people are not a menace. But they are buying the narrative, and they aren't listening to actual trans people. They aren't even looking at reality.
I think I've mentioned this before, but when I worked on satellite radio, I came to find out very early on that there was an enormous number of trans people who worked as over-the-road truck drivers. And part of the reason for that is because they work independently. They don't really have to expose themselves to people who are going to harass them or give them shit trying to do a job just to, support them and their families' lives. And I've certainly come to get to know many. I wouldn't say that I know 100, but I know dozens of them or have met them over the years. And the one thing that I know about them is that they're just with regards to everything else other than the gender dysphoria, they are just like you and me. They want to go to work. They want to be able to live their life without, trouble from anybody else. They want to be able to raise their families. They take care of and love people. They don't, jump out of bushes and harm people or go cruising in bathrooms looking to see somebody of the, opposite sex or whatever, by, throwing on a dress or, wearing a pair of jeans and cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. I mean, come on. They just want to exist, and everybody should have a right to take a shit or a piss.
And that whole, the bathroom thing has always been this canard because, again, when you look at what the real issues are with things like bathrooms and creeps in bathrooms, it is not someone who has gone to several psychiatrists to get letters, to get gender-affirming care, goes through both the social upheaval and physical aspects of transitioning so that they can sneak into a woman's bathroom and look at Look at a lady in a stall. First of all, there's stalls. There's not urinals in those bathrooms. So they're not looking at vaginas. So that is stupid. So that is completely that is a fever dream of straight men, because again, there's this idea that some creepazoid is going to do all that work, transition so they can look at naked women in the women's bathroom and get off. What's really happens, and we see these stories all the time, is regular old straight guys putting cameras in women's bathrooms.
Right.
And they watch the videos. They're not transitioning. They're not they're making stuff up. Yeah, or you might be the current president and just waltz into the dressing room of a pageant.
Young ladies who are at a pageant
to ogle barely legal women, sure, but so all this bathroom stuff is silly. It's always been silly. It's always been fake. And when you look at folks who are actually trans folks, this is especially when you look at trans men who are butcher than either of us by a long shot, most of them, with huge beards, burly dudes in buffalo plaid shirts, and they're like, am I supposed to show up in the women's bathroom because I was assigned female at birth? Does that make sense?
Let me tell you, I went to one of the largest events that they have every year here in the Coachella Valley this past weekend, and it was a fundraiser that they do each year for the LGBTQ Center of the Desert, the gay community center here in Palm Springs. And it's an event that they do called the Red Dress Red event. I have never seen so many lumberjack looking dudes in dresses in my life. And they were rocking them.
That's awesome.
Well, let's move out to Vermont, where a police officer there, Sergeant Kyle Kapitensky, faces serious charges after allegedly watching a transphobic YouTube video during a fatal crash involving a cyclist, Sean Hayes, not the actor, but the November incident resulted in Hayes' death, prompting a felony charge against Kapitensky for grossly negligent operation but with death resulting. The 38-year-old Hayes was adjusting his bike on the roadside when Kapitansky police cruiser struck him. Kapitansky reportedly exceeded the speed limit by 5 miles an hour and claimed that the cyclist, quote, came out of nowhere, end quote. Body cam footage, however, showed Kapitansky switching his vehicle's tablet display from YouTube to a dispatch screen right after the incident. Investigators found the tablet was playing anti-trans videos, including the title, Trans Woman Confronting Matt Walsh Takes Unexpected Turn, just before the crash. Kapitansky pleaded not guilty, intends to contest the charge, while Hayes' family pursues a civil lawsuit, and they argue that the crash was preventable if Kapitansky had shifted lanes. Uh-oh. Spaghetti-o.
Yeah, maybe you should not be watching anti-trans YouTube videos while you're doing your job.
Yeah, or any videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that he was watching those is pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was doing that while driving over the speed limit, not paying attention to the road, and he kills somebody. Yeah, he's mincemeat when he hits the penitentiary.
The thing I want to know about this story, is who is paying Mr. Kapitansky's legal fees?
Probably
I'm curious.
The police union.
That's what I'm wondering. Is it the police union? Is it the police department? Like, I'm just curious, because one of the things that we've talked about on this show before is there's so little impetus for better behavior from police departments in all kinds of ways, because a lot of times things like settlements are paid by the police department with taxpayer funds.
Right.
It is not hitting their pensions. It is not hitting their union dues. A lot of it is just gravy. It doesn't matter to them. It does not hit the police officer's pocket directly or even indirectly. It's the taxpayers that pay for police malfeasance 9 times out of 10. So I'm just curious, is this something where at the end of the day, if there's a civil lawsuit, is Kapitansky going to be on the hook, or are the taxpayers going to foot the bill? I'm just curious, because I feel like that makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does. And I'm actually researching that as we speak.
Because, yeah, I mean, again, I think that you could argue that if you're an on-duty cop and you're busy watching anti-trans YouTube videos, that you're acting outside of your job duties when you are doing that. And that should be not covered, and this is a sad story. Again, someone who is, Sean Hayes, just on the roadside fixing a bike, and this Kapitansky guy was so distracted, he just had to watch anti-trans videos. They were that important to him that he was speeding, watching them, and veering around, all over the road, and hit and killed someone in Vermont.
Yeah, well, the attorney who's representing him in this case is a guy by the name of David Slay, like sleigh ride.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't say here directly, like, who's on the hook for paying the fees, but it does indicate that while they did try and get the charges tossed, the judge wasn't having any of that in the Chittenden County Superior Criminal Court in Burlington. And apparently Judge David Fenster did not agree with this, and the case is going to proceed on the felony charges that had been brought by the DA's office, and said that the district attorney had presented enough evidence to support the finding of probable cause for this offense. So he does, by the way, he's 41 years old and he faces up to 15 years in prison if he is convicted. So This is not,
slap on the
this
wrist
is not being worked, they're not working the charges down. They're they're holding him to account, which is a good thing. The case is actually being handled by the deputy state's attorney, Matthew Dolezal. He's the prosecutor in the case. So I think actually it might be worth our making a follow-up call before our next Newsday Tuesday get-together and just asking the court, is he covering his own legal fees, or are they being paid for by the union? Or,
or by the taxpayer. Yeah.
Through taxpayer money. Yeah.
Yeah. So we might come back to you on this one.
What I will do is I will reach out to Alan Keyes, who is the author of the story that is covering this for Vermont Digger, and he's their public safety reporter. So we'll try and get a hold of him, because I'm sure that these are all questions that they are ready to answer.
Mm-hmm. And finally, we have a story about red hats. When I see a red hat in the crowd, I always literally I feel like a sense of panic and it turns out they're wearing a Washington Nationals hat or some other hat, and I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
But sometimes it is the hat you think it is. And last Friday night, an Indianapolis gay bar, Chatterbox, became the center of social media buzz after ejecting patrons wearing MAGA hats.
Yay.
Poor MAGA hats. The incident led to heated exchanges as bar staff accused the Trump supporters of harassment and misgendering. Video footage, now viral, captures a bartender asking the group to leave, citing the MAGA hats as the reason. Elise Hensley, who recorded the video, claims they were refused service due to their support for Trump. She returned to the bar for a confrontation, which led to more contentious dialogue. Despite accusations of discrimination, laughter erupted from both staff and patrons. Bar management, unrepentant, defended their decision on Instagram. They claimed the patrons initially harassed a staff member before being asked to leave. Chatterbox emphasized they refused to tolerate disrespectful behavior or symbolism, upholding their right to serve a welcoming community. The video gained traction, even drawing attention from Indiana Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. Yeah, again, fuck around and find out. I can tell you, that the bar's claims that the patrons harassed a staff member before being asked to leave, I believe that 100%. If you're going into a gay bar, whether you are homosexual or not, if you're going to a gay bar wearing a MAGA hat, you're there to provoke and irritate. And you're there to be a menace and to be a harasser. And so it doesn't surprise me that some group of MAGA people, again, whether they were gay or not, went into Chatterbox to try to start something.
Yep, absolutely. You're going to wear that, that going in that you're asking for trouble in
totally,
gay shark infested waters.
And it kind of goes to the idea too that these people who wear these stupid hats and shirts and all that stuff, they know what they're doing, and they do it on purpose. There was a video that I saw in several places online this week of some douchebag who wore a MAGA hat to the Magic Kingdom. And it was basically a video of it was sort of a point of view video of him walking down, Main Street or whatever street in Walt Disney World or Disneyland or wherever he was, and occasionally turning the camera back to show his face and then turning back again, literally hoping for people to get into it with him in fucking Disney World or Disneyland. Yeah. I forget which Disney was.
Totally inappropriate.
And he wasn't wearing it there, just to quietly, show support for the beloved leader. It was to try to pick a fight.
Right.
And that's what these hats are.
I wonder how his day went overall at the park, because Disney actually, if there's one thing that they are really good about, it's being able to mask situations and get problems under control either before or as fast as they happen, so that there's not a public scene. I have a lot of friends who've worked in the parks. I've spent a handful of years when I was with Sirius going and participating in special events at parks in down in Florida. And I got to tell you, you wouldn't really know that there's a police force there until you know that there's a police force there. And so I kind of wonder, like, they must keep an eye out for that stuff and have these people, being tracked the whole time that they're there, to make sure that things don't get out of control, because they want it to be a safe environment for families.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And but all of this stuff is really meant to. It's really provocation,
Yeah, of course.
And I'm visiting.
I dare you. It's almost like they're standing around like they're Robert Conrad, the actor, with a battery on their shoulder, just waiting for you to knock it off.
Yeah, and I'm at home at my parents' house, and we're doing some tidying, and the amount of items, the Hillary Clinton for prison buttons, the Latinos for Trump stickers, the Trump mugs that have magically found their way into a trash bin. We've filled a lot of. we've done our best.
Sorry, Richie. I am so
but
sorry.
That stuff is just there to just provoke and be dickish. It's not about actually expressing. And it kind of goes back to the central thing that Trumpism is not an expression of a coherent ideology. It's an expression of just hatefulness and cruelty in its free form, inchoate way. Because as we see how he governs, apart from just authoritarianism and racism and sexism and violence, there's not a lot of real gravitas to the ideas there. It's literally just make America great again. It's just literally a shirt. I mean, it's a hat, it's a shirt, it's a fuck you. It's just.
Yeah. By the way, because we weren't together on our last show on Saturday. This is the first time that you and I have had an opportunity to really connect while you've been on the road. And I am interested in hearing your take on what happened at the Department of Justice a few days ago with his in-person, rather impromptu speech to the troops there, and talking about basically curtailing the First Amendment with media that don't speak favorably about him, which I consider us to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about it. You need to take the impulse seriously. It's hard to talk about it in any kind of like thoughtful way, because the thing is, like, he says so many things that just are flagrantly in contravention of basics of the Constitution and basics of the First Amendment. It should be illegal, and you look at things like, the Columbia student, who they have in detention and are trying to deport.
Right. Not
because of any violent acts, purely because of speech that they don't like. And they're making the argument that that just the speech itself is a national security threat, such that they have authority under the Immigration and Naturalization Act to get rid of them, cancel their legal status here. So talking about, things like that news media should that it should be illegal for them to say bad things about the president or whatever. I think he truly believes that. It has no bearing on the First Amendment, which is pretty clear that that's not how it goes. That's not how it works. But the thing is, will they use their levers of power to try to make that reality? Definitely. I mean, that's why they install loyalists everywhere they can. Will they try to, use the FCC to harass license holders like NPR and PBS and maybe even major networks? Yes. Will they revoke funding to the extent funding is discretionary, if that funding finds its way into the hands of things like, independent journalists?
Well, public media, and also what really, really rocked my boat the other day, since it really is the biggest U.S. propaganda machine we have, is that he has basically dismantled, or is in the process of dismantling, the Voice of America.
Yeah. That has been in the works for sure. And that does, again, it's not surprising.
And those are things that are completely on Vladimir Putin's wish list for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the one who doesn't want it. I mean, as far as I could see, I could see Trump totally wanting to use that as his big propaganda machine.
Of course. But this goes to Putin's agenda and long game plays into Donald Trump's lizard brain short-term game, which is I want to be the leader. I want to be the beloved leader.
The king, the emperor,
and the
with
thing
his
is,
new clothes.
Yeah, emperor with his new clothes and all. And democratic mores in this country don't allow that. That's literally like the founding premise of the country was we don't do that. And so all the things that we've built up, an independent civil service full of people who are smart and are given the authority to not have to bend to political will, a strong judiciary, independent, that's constitutional, a strong press that's afforded a lot of freedoms under the First Amendment. All of this kind of like penumbra of democracy really is meant to cut against all the things Trump wants and Putin stands for. And so he sees places like, Russia or Turkey or China or North Korea and says, and he said this even in his first administration, why don't they treat me like that? Why don't they stand up and salute when I come in the room?
Yeah.
Because that's his idea of what power is. And so we're dealing with someone who fundamentally is not on the same page, doesn't understand, clearly never did not take AP US history or even regular US history, or I don't even know what he took. To be honest,
history.
Yeah, whatever. It is not surprising that he took a moment in speaking at the DOJ to talk again about what he always talks about, which is resentment and thin-skinnedness and retribution.
Yeah.
That's all he can do. That's all he knows.
Yeah.
So, not surprising.
Yeah. Must be the Queen's boy in him. Well, listen, we've covered a lot of bases on this episode, and we'll be back with you again on Saturday for more in-depth conversation in our Substantial Saturdays edition. You can always find us at Richie and John, RICHIEANDJOHN.com. on the web. You can also find our telephone number and our, email address, and all that stuff is right there at the bottom of that page. So if you want to get in touch with us, please do. We've enjoyed hearing from you on a number of things that we've been talking about lately. I really enjoyed some of the messages that we have received with regards to things that we talked about just in our last episodes, where we had an opportunity to mention Gavin Newsom and the trouble that he is in over his having broke with his party in the interest of his running for president in 2028. I don't think that that's going to be so easy for him now. And frankly, my loyalties right now would be stuck between I'm not running Pete Buttigieg and somebody who honestly should be running for California governor, has indicated that she's going to, and I think that I will support for that. So at least here in our homeland of safety, the blue safety net, we'll have hopefully somebody like Katie Porter as our next governor of the Golden State. Really outstanding candidate who served in Congress and from Orange County, California, and is the kind of leader that I think all of us deserve right now at the federal level. AOC is really picking up steam. I wish that she would step out of her congressional seat and take Chuck Schumer's Senate seat after he flip-flopped on us this past week. I think we're all ready for Chuck to call it a day. But we'll get an opportunity to talk about all this and more as we head into our Saturday episode later in the week, and invite you to write and let us know what you're thinking about and what's affecting your life and your household. So drop us a line, go to richieandjohn.com. And again, our voicemail line is there, as well as our email addresses. So always enjoy having the opportunity to get together and talk with you. And Richie, I hope that you have a safe journey back home. I think we're going to do the Saturday show, and you're still going to be here in the Golden State for this episode before you head back, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Well, hope everybody has a good week. And until we get together again, may your shadow fall in pleasant places. See ya.
Bye, folks.
Thank you for joining us on Richie and John. This podcast is a production of the Mutual Broadcasting System and is available at richieandjohn.com, as well as most major podcast portals, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify.
With courage bold and voices clear, for life, liberty, happiness, they persevere. Never in the shadows, they stand tall. For truth and freedom, they answer the call. Richie and John, hear the world echo your name. Fighting for justice, lighting freedom's flame. Champions of diversity, truth in the night. In the battle for equality, they're ready to fight. And as the fight goes on, from sea to shining sea, Richie and John, you're the voice of the free. Keep shining bright, your impact will grow. The world stands with you on the Richie and John Show.